The crack of bone wasn't just a sound, it was a shattering of something deeper. My father's fist, heavy and deliberate, connected with my jaw so hard, I swear the room tilted. The taste of iron flooded my mouth instantly, and my knees buckled before I could even think of staying on my feet. I landed hard on the kitchen tile, my palm slipping in a thin smear of my own blood. My ears rang, drowning out my own breathing, but not enough to miss my mother's voice. She didn't gasp. She didn't rush over. She didn't even flinch. She laughed a sharp, cold sound that made the hair on my arms stand up. "That's what you get for being worthless," she said, stepping over me like I was a piece of trash left on the floor. "Maybe now you'll learn your place." All I'd done was ask why I had to clean the entire backyard when my brother Kyle was still lying on the couch scrolling through his phone. My exact words, "Why can't he do anything around here?" had apparently been talking back in my father's language. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. Kyle, of course, smirked from the doorway. He was 24, jobless, and somehow the crown jewel of the family. Dad called him the future of our bloodline. I called him lazy, spoiled, and exactly why this house was hell to live in. "Get up," my father barked, towering over me. "Or do you need another lesson?" I tried to stand, my jaw throbbing with every movement. I could barely close my mouth without pain. My voice came out as a muffled, "I'm fine," though it hurt to speak. "You'll be fine when you stop running your mouth," Dad growled. "Worthless people don't get to complain." Mom just poured herself a coffee, humming like the smell of blood in her kitchen was no different from burnt toast. "Make sure you finish the backyard before lunch," she said. "And clean yourself up. I don't want neighbors thinking we're savages." I almost laughed at that, the irony of a woman calling me worthless while her husband smashed my jaw, but I knew better. Humor was just another trigger in this house. Outside, the air felt thick, heavy with humidity. I gripped the broom tighter than I needed to, not because sweeping mattered, but because my hands wouldn't stop shaking otherwise. The taste of blood still clung to my tongue, my teeth aching from the impact. From the living room window, I could see Kyle watching TV, the reflection of the screen dancing on his smirking face. I knew that smirk well. It was the silent, "You'll never be more than this," that I'd been seeing since I was a kid. I was 26, old enough to walk away, but not free enough to. My savings were gone, borrowed by my parents for one of Kyle's failed businesses. My job hours had been cut, rent was impossible on my own, and the few friends I had left lived miles away. Every plan I'd made to get out had been sabotaged in one way or another. My car mysteriously broke down before interviews. My phone charger disappeared on days I needed to make important calls. Mom always said, "Maybe it's a sign you're not ready for the world." But that punch, the one that rattled my teeth and stole the air from my lungs, didn't feel like a sign to stay. It felt like the last straw. By nightfall, the swelling in my jaw had doubled. I pressed a cold spoon to it in the bathroom, staring at the stranger in the mirror. My lips were split, my left eye slightly bruised from the angle of the hit. I didn't look like someone who could fight back. I looked like someone who'd already lost. But I wasn't. Not yet. That night, while they sat in the living room arguing over what takeout to order, I sat on the edge of my bed and started planning. My hands still shook, my face still burned, but my thoughts were razor sharp. This time, I wasn't going to wait for them to break something else. This time, I was going to make sure they learned what real damage felt like. And when it happened, they'd never see it coming. By the next morning, the swelling had hardened into an ache that spread from my jaw to my temple. I could barely chew the piece of toast I'd forced down just to keep my stomach from turning on itself. Every time I opened my mouth, I remembered the sound of bone against bone, my father's lesson echoing in my head like it wanted to be permanent. But that ache had company now, a quiet, sharp thought that sat in my chest and pulsed every time I heard their voices. When I stepped into the kitchen, Dad was already there, sipping his coffee like he hadn't broken my face 12 hours earlier. Mom was at the stove, humming while flipping pancakes, the good kind she never made for me, only for Kyle. He was at the table, hair a mess, grinning lazily as he forked syrup into his mouth. "Don't just stand there," Mom said without turning. "You can pour juice for your brother." My jaw ached when I clenched it, but I poured anyway, sliding the glass toward him. He didn't say thanks, he never did. Instead, he tilted his head with that familiar smirk. "Still talking funny," he said, mimicking my stiff jaw. "Guess Dad really knocked some sense into you." Dad chuckled without looking up. "She's lucky I didn't break more than her mouth." I froze there, juice still in my hand, and in that moment, something crystallized. This wasn't just cruelty, this was their normal, and if I stayed long enough, it would become mine. That night, when the house had gone quiet, I unlocked the old cedar chest in my closet. Buried under old blankets were 3 things they'd forgotten. I had my high school laptop, a set of spare house keys, and a spiral notebook. The laptop was slow, the screen flickered, but it worked well enough for what I needed. I started writing. Not a diary, not a confession, a blueprint, not just for leaving, but for taking something with me that they could never replace. The first step wasn't confrontation, it wasn't telling them off. It was invisibility. For the next few days, I became so obedient it was almost boring. I cleaned without complaint, ate in silence, even laughed at Kyle's pathetic jokes. I kept my eyes down when Dad spoke, never asked questions, never talked back. And it worked. They stopped looking at me like a threat. They stopped looking at me at all. But while they relaxed, I paid attention to the little things most people overlook. Where Dad kept his important papers in the desk drawer. The times Mom left her phone unattended to go gossip in the backyard. The way Kyle bragged about things he shouldn't, like passwords and bank details he thought made him sound smart. One evening, Mom left her handbag on the counter while she went to water her plants. I stood there, dish towel in hand, pretending to dry a plate, until I heard the sliding door click shut. In less than 30 seconds, I had her phone in my hand, my thumb swiping through her photo gallery, her saved emails, her notes app where she kept passwords like they were grocery lists. My heart hammered, but I didn't keep any of it, not yet. I memorized patterns, email addresses, connections. It wasn't just about getting dirt, it was about understanding how they moved. The more I learned, the more the plan evolved. Leaving them in ruins wasn't enough. I wanted them to feel exposed, vulnerable, small. 2 weeks later, Kyle came home bragging to Mom about how he was finally gonna make it big. He'd invested Dad's networking funds into some scheme with his friend Carter. I pretended not to listen, but I caught enough. A launch event, a rented venue, Dad's business friends invited to see Kyle's genius. That was my window. For the next few days, I lived in 2 worlds. By day, I was the silent, obedient daughter who never looked them in the eye. By night, I was piecing together a way to step into Kyle's spotlight just long enough to tear their whole image apart. I didn't want to hurt them physically, not like they hurt me. I wanted to hit where it would bleed the longest, their pride, their credibility, their sense of being untouchable. One night, as I sat at my desk, notebook open, the bruise on my jaw fading to a dull yellow, I realized something. I wasn't just planning to leave. I was planning to erase the version of me they thought they owned. And when I was done, they wouldn't just lose me. They'd lose everything they'd built on my silence. The night of Kyle's big debut was lit like a movie set. Strings of gold lights draped across the rented hall, fake champagne flowing into tall glasses, and every man in the room wearing a suit just tight enough to show he'd spent more money on tailoring than morals. I slipped in early, unnoticed, dressed in black that didn't beg for attention but commanded it if you looked twice. My hair was pinned up, makeup sharp enough to slice through the air. I didn't look like their worthless daughter anymore. I looked like someone they'd pretend to know if they wanted something. Kyle was already playing the host, shaking hands like he was born to it. Dad hovered behind him, chest puffed out like Kyle's success was his personal achievement. Mom, in a glittering dress, floated from conversation to conversation, dropping hints about how hard Kyle worked, while conveniently skipping over the part about where the funding came from. They didn't see me at first. I made sure of that. I stayed near the bar, listening, watching. The projector at the front of the room looped Kyle's logo and pictures of him working, all staged. When the speeches began, Dad took the mic first. "My son," he boomed, "is proof that hard work, discipline, and the right guidance will always pay off." That word discipline made my jaw twitch, but I smiled. Then Kyle launched into his pitch, pretending to be humble while bragging about his original concept and innovative approach. I let him talk, let him stack his tower higher, because I was about to knock it down. At the exact moment Kyle clicked for the video presentation, I stepped toward the AV table and slid the small USB I'd been guarding for weeks into the port. It took less than 3 seconds for my files to override his. The screen flickered. Instead of sleek promotional footage, the first photo that appeared was Dad's handwritten ledger, the one listing unofficial payments to Greece business deals. Then, a scan of Mom's private messages to a woman she owed money to, calling her a desperate beggar. Gasps started to ripple through the crowd. Next came a video clip. Dad slamming his fist into the wall and yelling, "You're nothing without me," his voice crystal clear. Then another Kyle mocking a disabled coworker in a parking lot. The room went dead silent. Someone in the back muttered, "Is this real?" And another voice answered, "That's his voice." I didn't look at them, not yet. I wanted them to feel it before they saw me. The final slide was a simple text file with one line, "Funded by stolen money meant for a blind child's medical treatment." That was when the noise hit sharp, collective, scandalized. Chairs scraped back, voices rose, and people began pulling out their phones. I walked toward the front then, slow and steady, the way you walk when you've already won. Kyle's face was bloodless, his mouth opening and closing like he'd forgotten how to breathe. Mom's hands clutched her clutch bag like it could save her. Dad was staring straight at me now, and I swear for the first time in my life I saw fear in his eyes. "You," he hissed. "Me," I said, my voice calm. My jaw didn't ache anymore. The worthless one. The one who doesn't talk back. People were filming now. Not for me, for them. To keep the story alive long after tonight. I leaned in, just enough so they'd hear me over the chaos. "You built this family name on cruelty. I just returned it to you. Without the polish." Then I turned and walked out into the cool night air, my steps light, the weight in my chest gone. Behind me, I could still hear their voices panicked, desperate as their empire cracked in front of every single person whose opinion they cared about. And I didn't have to look back to know. Their faces were as pale as the truth I'd just given them. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.